This conference will now be recorded.
Good afternoon. It's 1 o'clock. Thank you all for coming to the board meeting here. I can have you all stand and we'll do the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of Thank you. I had to pause there. I couldn't figure out what that noise was, but it's action on the roof. Thank you. Jill, would you please do the roll call and establish the quorum and the homeowner statement?
Board President Barbara Fugelberg.
Here.
Board Vice President Ron Woodward.
Here.
Board Secretary Marilyn Sorensen.
Here.
Board Treasurer Mike Rugland. Board of Directors Steve Deal.
Here.
Board of Director Jim Meering.
Here.
Golf Course Representative Jason McKinney is absent. Homeowner statement period. Please mute your audio. Please use the chat option for your questions. Questions should be addressed to the concerns of the motion before the board takes final action on an item under formal discussion on the table. Negative comments directed at residents, employees of the association, or board of directors will not be allowed. Thank you.
Thank you. First thing on the agenda, as usual, is approval of the meeting minutes from the February 13th, 2022. Can I have a motion?
I make a motion to approve the minutes from the January 13 board meeting.
Thank you. A second? Mike Rugland, thank you. Any comments, questions, concerns from any of the board members about the minutes that were posted? None. Anything from any residents? I'm looking in the chat. There's nothing in the chat. Just remind the folks that are online that if you want to make a comment, please put it in the chat. Seeing none, we'll go ahead and call for the vote. All in favor of approving the meeting minutes from January 13th, 2022, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes. Second thing is a motion on the financial report for December 2021. Can I get a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve the financial report for December 2021.
I would second that motion.
Any questions or comments from any member of the board on the financial statement? Seeing none. Any questions or comments, residents in the audience or residents online? Seeing none. All in favor of approving the financial? I'm always afraid it's kind of me doing something. The financials of December 2021. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Thank you. Okay. I think for those of you who are gun owners and gun aficionados, that doesn't sound like a gun. Okay. All right, committee reports. Budget Committee, Bill Powell. There he is, okay. So we have a motion. Can someone make a motion regarding the budget for fiscal year 22-23?
I make a motion to approve the 22-23 fiscal year Happy Trails operating budget as presented. The new dues will be 188.46 per lot and 216.06 for the villa.
I second.
Great, thank you. So any comments, questions from any board member? Marilyn, you have anything? Steve? Mike? Ron, Jim, okay, all right. Bill, do you want to give us a little background on how this came to be?
The budget we see there represents an income projected of $3,927,593.71, and the expenses of $3,033,558 and 87 cents. So it's nearly a balanced budget. We're just a smidge under $6,000 of not being balanced. The increases on the dues are and the reserve are equal to 6% of last year's dues. Sewer water pass-through is an estimate. We have not received anything from the city yet, but we don't have any feeling that it's going to be significantly different than last year. So it is approximately last year's number. So that comes up to the numbers that you've been given.
I'll make a comment that the increase to dues is to the base rate, but not to the of 6%, which we're able to do through the CCNRs without the residents' vote. Looking at you have not increased the sewer pass-through. And so technically, you really only have a 5.5% increase out of pocket to the residents. So that's sort of the good news. As I looked and was sat in on the meetings that you had, the budget committee had, the major areas of significant increase are in wages that the board knew that they'd be having to do to keep up with the market, and not any increase in staffing. So some of those wage increases were from between 20 and 30% in order to get them up to market. So to have this budget come in this good at even just a 6% increase in the base rate, I think is something to.
There were no
look at.
surprises. Those weren't surprises, but there were really no surprise numbers anyplace, including the insurance, which we were concerned about, liability insurance, and that came in like $4,000 over.
Yeah.
So
That's good, yeah. We've had conversations with HomeCo about various ways that we might look at in the future as we start working on this living with the current budget of areas that we think that we possibly will be able to make some significant cuts in next year. One of particularly is our legal expenses. We're hoping will go down. So anything else from the board?
There was a significant increase in overtime for landscaping.
in the budget or in the
Yeah.
actuals?
Actually, in the budget. 2023, 7,000,
All right.
1,100 to 7,000.
Mhm. Yeah, I don't have a comment on that. I'm not,
Jill, have your staff
numbers that we got given.
noticed? So remember this last year, we did get notice from the city that we are now responsible for the landscaping along Cotton. And we've not increased our landscaping staff. Have you seen an increase in employee time and overtime related to that?
Yes, there has been some overtime.
Maybe we'll be able to quantify that for us in the future, but we'll look at that. We should not really be planning much overtime. We know what happens, but it's not
And the
something
Cotton Lane Water added $3,000 to the budget.
to the utilities.
That's our estimate.
Okay, good. All right. Any questions for the residents? Well, that's impressive. And I don't see anything in here. So given it's a financial thing, I'd like a roll call vote, please.
Steve Dale,
Yes.
Jim Mehring,
Yes.
Marilyn Sorensen,
Yes.
Mike Rugland,
Yes.
Ron Woodward,
Yes.
Barbara Fugelberg.
Yes,
Passes unanimously.
thank you. Thank you. Okay. Next thing on the agenda, we're going all the way down to, there's no reports from any other committee. none from activities, none from food service. At the end of the presentation, though, Becky Wells will be giving us a little conversation on the status of the chuck wagon. The next thing on the agenda is the club updates. There's a request from Pickleball Club regarding a shed. Can I have a motion?
I'd make the motion to approve the pickleball club to add a second shed at the Cascades Court location. This would be at the club's expense.
So currently there is a shed there that they've had. Oh, I'm sorry, thank you. Do I get a second for that? Bert is keeping me on task here. The shed that they've had there has been at least, I would say, 3 or 4 years. And they also paid for that. So is there a representative from Pickleball Club here who can explain this request?
Good afternoon. My name is Doug Smoke, and I'm the current vice president of the Happy Trails Pickleball Club. And I'm the one that has requested this second shed to be located at the property there at the Cascade Pickleball Courts. The shed that you're speaking of that is currently on the Cascade Courts, I believe is probably close to 7 or 8 years old at any rate, due to all the items that we use year after year for the pickleball tournament. We're running out of space. So we're looking to put another 10 by 10, actually a 10 by 10 shed. The one that is there now is an 8 by 10.
So will this be a pre-purchase shed or is it something that you will have built?
I was waiting for the approval and any requirements put on by the board or the HOA or anyone. At this point, I'm looking at a assembled shed purchased by a contractor. So they would come on and build the shed.
Built, okay. Could the board members correct me if I'm wrong here? I know you will. But in our design guidelines, isn't it that on a homeowner's lot, it has to be built? It cannot be a pre-purchase shed. Am I correct in that, Mike?
A shed, yes, it has to be built, but
Oh, so you're talking like a Rubbermaid though, is what they talk about, storage shed. You're talking more of a 10 by 10
It's a 10 by 10 wood framed
wood
that
frame.
would be built on site.
Okay, they'd be built on site.
Correct.
Okay. Any other questions from any board members?
Does that require a permit from the DRC?
Well, it is on common area.
Correct. It's common area property, but it would not require a building permit from my understanding from the city of Surprise due to the fact that the structure is exempt, being a storage structure. However, if there has any utilities, I don't know if they plan on running electrical or anything to it. If so, that would have to be permitted by the city of Surprise.
So are you planning on having electrical in it?
No, not at this time.
All right. And, okay, any questions from the residents? As Jim's coming up, I did note that it again will be behind another residential lot. And I'm assuming that person, although that's not required, but I'm assuming that person behind it wouldn't object to this. It's not a,
I would, did you guys get the location? I had a diagram there. It is directly behind that corner lot. I can't remember the number of the lot, but based on the approval, I didn't know whether or not that was something you wanted the club to do, contact that resident, or whether or not the board or the DRC would do that. So whatever direction you have.
that's only a 6-foot high lot, right?
That,
Or I mean, a 6-foot high shed.
the sidewalls are 6 foot. That means that the peak would probably be at the 8 foot.
Yeah, okay.
okay, thank you.
Jim Clymer, lot 642. Just thinking of the aesthetics of the resort, I feel that the new shed should be of same size, style, and color as the existing shed. start adding things around, different sizes, different shapes, different colors, and it just looks like crap.
Thank you, Jim. And we know that Jim spent many a year on the DRC committee. Any other questions, comments from any other resident? Jill, who made the motion?
Jim made the motion and Mike seconded it.
Okay.
I would like to add to my proposal that the new shed match the existing shed.
As close as you can. Okay.
I'll second it.
Okay. So the motion is to approve Pickleball's request to build a shed out of their expense on the property that they've allocated to us, that it appear similar to the shed that's currently there. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? No. Motion passes. Thank you. Okay. Next thing on the agenda, we have no old business. On the new business, we have a motion regarding our virtual meeting subscription. Currently, we use GoToMeeting, and we have an option here of going to Zoom. So would someone like to make a motion?
I make a motion to the association to switch to Zoom for the virtual meeting software, not to exceed $2,800 a year.
I'll second it.
Any comments or questions from the board members?
I noticed the difference between the one we're using now and Zoom is that Zoom will allow the Canadian residents to attend the meeting virtually. So that should be a plus. I don't know anything about Zoom meetings or how they work, if they're any better than GoToMeeting, but I think just adding the Canadian residents is probably worth it.
Our current expenses, I believe, are under $200 a month. So this is a significant increase from 200 a year. Correct, Mike? Shake your head. Okay. 200 a year. So we're going up a significant amount. And I agree completely, being able to add the Canadian residents would really be helpful. We have a Canadian resident in the back there, Stu. We'll ask you to come speak to the question when we get to that point. I know people who both use Zoom and GoToMeeting. It does seem that Zoom is the most popular one out there. It does have an opportunity for someone to raise their hand and be able to be called on, versus GoToMeeting does not. And it also has the ability for us to kind of do a poll of the people who are attending to see yay or nay as to how they might want the board to vote. So I think it's a good idea. Any other questions, comments from any board member?
What level are we buying? What level are we acquiring? Is it the business level of 300 people that could be on one time?
Jill, do you know that answer?
Yes, business level.
Yeah, 200. Oh yeah, 200 per year. Why are we getting 2,800? Or is there a base fee and then there's plus?
Are you talking about when you're just looking at the cost, when you're looking at the startup, is that $200? But that's not including anything that goes in those packages. So when you go further on GoToMeeting, or I mean Zoom, you get into how many, what's the reference they use on there?
License?
It's
Yeah, how
10
many-
licenses.
Correct. So in the business package, it comes with 10 licenses. So it's talking $200 per license. And then you're adding an additional $600 for the package to be able to communicate with folks from Canada. So that's where it all ends up being in the end of that 2026 and some change, I believe.
So do we have the ability to get the Canadian people and have fewer licenses?
No, the business only allocates 10 licenses. So you
Okay.
can't take off the licenses. If we step down lower licenses, it brings us into the next lower category, which wouldn't be enough folks logging on. I think it was only 100 logging on. If we had a big meeting, such as a Chuck Wagon meeting or something like that, we may very well exceed that. and the storage isn't enough in order to do the recordings. It would only record for an hour versus being able to record for like 24 hours. So, so we can record our sessions and things like that.
How long does the storage last? I'm talking months, weeks.
That's not defined at the moment. However, I think we got that figured out between even Zoom or using GoToMeeting. What I've done is I've created a private YouTube account for Happy Trails so that I can take the MP4 once it's recorded and add it onto our YouTube account. That will be private, and I can always address that link to the website, and those will stay forever.
All right, thank you. Any other questions from the board? Okay, questions from the residents? Glenn?
Glenn Brower, lot number 2353. Couple questions, basically funding from the operations budget.
Yes.
Bill, is this in the new budget? It's not in the new budget, so when is this supposed to start?
This is, our contract is up within the next few months with GoToMeeting. So we need to sign a contract with it and with someone.
Okay,
either-
so it's not in the next fiscal year budget.
No, it's not. But we'll figure out a way of getting it paid for.
Thank you.
It's to be an increase rate of what our current line item is. We have a line item for GoToMeeting right now. Increase the rate. It's not going to change what we charge the residents. It just means we need to find savings someplace else. Roberta?
Yes, Roberta Ernest, 712. So this is where statistics come in as a player. So how many residents do we have that reside in Canada? That would be my first question. I realize you may not be able to answer that right now. How many residents from Canada do we get to log into the Zoom or the GoToMeeting? And my question is, then what is the difference? What benefits are we getting for Zoom compared to GoTo, other than being able to have Canadian residents dial in? And is that value or increase worth possibly a small amount of residents that might be able to attend the meeting? I'm not doing this to be mean to the Canadians by any means, but it looks like we're spending more to get maybe a couple people that might actually consider dialing into the meeting. You see what I'm saying? Does that make sense?
I understand what you're saying, and it's a valid point. The issue, I'll come back with that every owner here has an opportunity to dial into the meeting. It's their choice whether they do or not. Right now, the Canadians are excluded other than having to pay extra. So
To pay extra, how do they pay extra to dial in?
they would now, if they wanted to go in to GoToMeeting, they would have to pay extra.
They have to pay.
Yes.
Okay, I understand.
So this would then be
Right.
part of their,
So again, I'm going with benefits and features of what's the
Uh-huh,
difference between GoTo and Zoom? So I asked that of the board. What's the difference?
Roberta, we do not have that data to give to you, but we know that we probably have at least 100 people, depending upon the meeting, logging in. Sometimes we've had over 200, and that have tried to log in, and we're limited to 200. So that means that particularly at an annual meeting, or was it a Meet the Candidates meeting over a year ago, people were not able to log in who wanted an opportunity to.
It was to meet the candidates.
And so this is going to give more residents the opportunity, if they chose, to do it. And therefore, it's not excluding. Mr. Johnson?
Stu Johnson, lot 885. I'm going to bring the trucks here because it's not a Canadian problem. It is a provider problem. I listen to all the Zoom meetings and stuff at home, and I reside in Canada, so it must be their provider. I'm not sure at all.
So you say it's the individual Canadians provider problem?
Correct, yes.
Whether they're
Because I
with
watch these.
Blue Moose or whoever.
I've heard from a lot of people that watch our meetings, and they all, a lot of them say, why don't you go to Zoom? It's a much better program. You have a lot less droppage and a lot less problems with it. And we've had our problems with GoToMeeting this year, but everybody was wondering how we're going to pay for it. We got a line item in the expense budget called contingencies on things that come up that we don't have a line item for, and we can handle the expense. I don't think that's an issue.
Anything else? Steve? Just a second. Now, Mike, I am not seeing anything in the chat. Can you see the chat?
I do see the chat. The only thing that we have so far is some problems with the recording cutting out and whatnot to our residents that are
Okay, all right. I just
logged
want to
on.
make sure that if they wanted to make a comment, they could make a comment. Right. Okay, thank you. I'll call the question, and the question is to make a motion for the association to switch to Zoom for the virtual meeting software not to exceed $2,800 per year. Again, it's a financial aspect, so I'll do a roll call vote, please.
Steve Deal,
Yes.
Mike Rugland, Marilyn Sorensen,
Yes.
Jim Mehring,
Yes.
Ron Woodward,
Yes.
Barbara Fugelberg.
Yes,
Passes.
having been on both platforms, I do find the Zoom process much easier. And I know that many of you have used Zoom, and this would eliminate you having to learn two programs versus just one. I know many of you are capable of that, but some of us are not. Okay, the next thing on the agenda under new business is a request to move a water valve. Can I get a motion, please?
I make a motion to approve the association to pay to have a water valve moved to a different location. Presently, the homeowners request. Get a second?
I'd second that, Mike.
Presently, the homeowner is requesting the water shut-off valve be removed off their lot. I'm familiar with this. This has been a problem for many years. He's got storage shelves and stuffs over the top of it. But again, it's been there for a number of years.
So this valve is a Happy Trails water shutoff valve. It has nothing to do with their individual lot. And so if there is a water leak problem or something, our staff then has to go onto their lot. And the good news is we have a number of staff who remember where it is in a shed, right? Or
No,
under a storage shed. So moving it would be an expense. But currently it's not a problem for us, but the homeowner feels it's a problem. Am I correct in that? Mike, you want to speak to that?
the situation is they're requesting to put a manufactured home on the lot, and it is in the RV port where the valve is. The valve would then cover the manufactured home. I'm sorry, vice versa. Manufactured home would then cover the valve where we did not have access to it. So with the valve being where it is, they would not be able to place the manufactured home on the lot.
What is the lot number for this?
1391.
Mike, does the manufactured home, it's going on the required side of the lot and all those issues, the valve just got put in an inappropriate place initially?
Correct.
Thank you.
From my understanding, the lots got shifted. I don't know exactly when that runs back to developer times, I'm sure. But we have two of them on that street that are in strange locations.
You know, to move this valve, it's in excess of probably in excess of $6,000. It's been there since 1984, I guess. And there's more than one shut-off valve on numerous lots throughout the resort, so I don't think this is an issue.
Jim Marion, you have a comment? Marilyn, okay, all right. Questions from the audience? Jim?
Yeah, Jim Clymer, lot 642. We have a valve underneath our Arizona room. There's a key coming up out of the curb box, and it's permanently in there because you can't lift it out unless you take the floor out of the Arizona room. As far as I know, it's never been turned off.
Thank you. Any other questions, comments from the residents?
Glenn Brower, lot 2353. Has anybody looked at the surveyor's plot plan of that lot? Is there an easement for Happy Trails HOA to maintain and service that area or not?
Mike, nice. Can you answer that question?
It's all private property. Even the easements that fall on that particular lot are an interior lot. So they own lot line to lot line, their neighboring properties abutting them.
More,
But the original survey should have shown that valve on private property. And to be on private property, you can't access it without an easement.
Mhm.
Did we do the research of that?
The researchers, there's a lot of stuff that's the association is built on that doesn't have easements, especially on other people's property. If you look at the north gate, most of that gate's on property that's owned by the lots on each side. One has an easement, the other one doesn't. So we got that problem all through the resort, that there's no easement recorded on a lot of this stuff.
Okay, the $6,000 cost, you're looking at a $6,000 cost of the HOA. Is this owner, how long has this owner been an owner of that property? Do you know?
Jill, can you tell us that off the top of your head?
4 years?
Okay.
Okay. Now he's changing the complex, he's changing the lot by putting a manufactured home on it. He understands that there's a valve in there that has to be accessed by HOA for on and off in a case of that. Is he going to pay any of that expense, or is that's going to be all on HOA?
All on the HOA. Request is. And you know, with regards to utilities, when a lot comes on, or even if you want to change your trash can or even the pagoda lamp, that's an expense that is expected to be paid by the homeowner after it gets approved. I'm looking at the chat.
Glenn, the valves in a location wouldn't be in the way of a modular or a park model put on the lot. It's on the far left side of the lot.
Okay. All right. I'm going to call for the question. So we have a motion and a second. Seeing no other further questions or comments. The motion is to approve the association paying to have the water valve moved to a different location. All in favor, say aye. All opposed? Say nay.
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Nay.
Motion does not pass. Okay. Jill, on our agenda, we have under new business, the Chuck Wagon walk-in cooler. Do we want to remove that?
I'm looking at Cindy to see if it's still cold. It is still cold, so
Okay,
yes, we
great.
do need to
All right.
remove it.
We thought we were going to have to replace or repair, big dollar repair on the walk-in freezer, but it turned out we were able to get a simple repair done on it. So that is off the agenda. Next thing on the agenda under variances requests, excuse me as I move ahead, is a request for lot 961 for a pop-up canopy for shade. Can I get a motion?
I'd make a motion to approve the pop-up canopy in lot 961.
I'll second.
All right, so what history do we have on this? The renters are asking permission to leave the pop-up canopy, which they've put on their lot for shade. Questions, comments from any member of the board?
I have a comment or two. Lot 962 is a lot that I rented on in 1997 from Paul and Cheryl Smith. There is no canopy. It's a wide open, naked lot. The couple that is occupying it, I happen to know quite well. I hired a gentleman on the fire department when I was a fire chief, probably, well, I can't tell you how long I'm retired, but probably about 30 years ago. They've come to Happy Trails as renters. They enjoy it. They are talking eventually buying. And Joel mentioned to me, next season, I'm going to bring this thing down. Well, it didn't really strike me as unusual because I've seen some other ones around the resort. But they've got it up and they can't be here to speak for themselves as they're in Mexico. Hope they'll be back Sunday. But I've asked the board members to drive by and look at it. It's about the size of a tents you see at Vendors Day. You can't really see it from the road because of where his truck is parked. But I just think that we should at least consider it. Thank you.
Thank you. Always kind of nice to know where you started out here, Jim. So if I recall from the DRC's perspective, they've had many requests like this in the past for people to put up gazebos or there's temporary things, and it is not in the guidelines. And mostly the reason to deny it has always been that these things are not permanent structure and that some have gone airborne, and this one could potentially go airborne too and land in someone else's property. So that's the reason that they typically are denied. Any questions, comments from any other board member? Marilyn, as the DRC liaison, anything?
No, I think we're good.
Okay. Pardon me?
The motion's already been made.
Yep. Any questions, comments from the residents? Oh, I'm sorry.
I've gone by and looked at this, and my only concern about it is that it's a green canopy and clashes with anything around there. It looks like something that you would have at a tailgate party or something like that. And I know that they've been disapproved in the past and even cited by DRC for being on the lots and required to take them down. I would hate to see it become the standard for the resort.
Thank you. Go ahead.
Marie Beshin, Lot 900. I also agree with the monsoons that come in the summertime and stuff. That is the big fear with the temporary ones, is that they do become airborne and they go flying.
This unit will be gone by the end of April.
Right.
They're not here year round.
Yeah. Even at that, it's pretty windy. Any other questions, comments from the residents? The only thing was a resident on the chat has suggested that Jim Marion would sustain from voting. Jim's already told the board that he would. According to our Robert's rules that we use, is that if a board member has a conflict of interest, they just need to note that conflict of interest, and then they still are allowed technically to vote. They would not be allowed to vote if there was a financial gain that they could receive from it. But Jim certainly would not get a financial gain that we are aware of. Might get another beer, but Jim has already decided that he's not going to vote on this. So any other questions from the residents? Seeing none, we'll call for a vote. The motion is to, I just got a picture of my dogs again, sorry about that, is to approve the pop-up canopy on lot 961. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Did he sustain? All who want the motion to be not approved, say aye. Aye. Okay, motion does not pass.
Madam President,
Yes.
I'd like to submit a motion to allow the current residents to keep their tent up until April 1st, 2022.
Do we hear a second?
I'll-
All right, so motion is to allow the current people to keep it up. Just a second, I've got to ask for the board comments first. Any questions or comments from the board?
Well, if we're gonna do that, we might as well leave it to approve it for everybody. I have a problem doing stuff like this because when somebody does it, everybody else wants to do it.
I can live with that, Mike.
Yeah, and I have a problem in that I personally haven't had, maybe people think I don't have any influence, but I've not had any resident come up to me, ask for any special favors because I'm on the board. And I would hope that they would know that they would not get them. So any other questions, comments from any other board member? Okay, Roberta.
Yes, Robert Ernest, 712. Just a reminder, I don't think I need to tell you this, but it does clearly say in the DRC and in our rules, no tents. You said tent, although I think we're still talking canopy. So there's a fine line on that. No tents on the lot. They could, of course, purchase a gazebo that they could construct, but then they'd probably have to leave it there because it would be more of a permanent structure. So just a reminder. But
Gazebos have to be permanently attached.
right, yeah.
Jim Clymer, can you speak to your years on DRC? Our historical expert here.
Barbara, could you restate that? I didn't quite get it.
So should we allow this one that we just said should not be there? Would we allow him to keep it up until April? So
No.
your experience on the DRC, you had many of these requests come up for this typical pop-up tent, awning, canopy, whatever you want to call it, and they were always disapproved, correct?
Yes, they were always disapproved. And one of the concerns that everybody should be aware of is those things flap in the wind. And when you're a neighbor trying to sleep at night, the wind's blowing, it's a problem. The other thing is, I mean, yes, they can look very aesthetically nice. They can serve a purpose and all that. But you allow that really nice one once, then you can't disallow the really crappy ones over and over again. So it's a bad precedence to get started.
A resident on the chat line said, if you allow one, those things will be popping up everywhere. Any other questions, comments from the residents? Seeing none, call for the motion. The motion was to allow this resident to keep it up until April when they leave. So all in favor of allowing that, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Aye. Okay, motion does not pass. Thanks for asking, though. No harm in asking. Okay. So the last thing on the agenda is President's announcements. I don't have many. One of the things I did want to mention, though, is that the mail center has figured out a process to allow mail to be redirected. We're not allowed to use mail forwarding terminology, but mail can be redirected. And I think many of you have seen a blast that Lily sent out that you would fill out a form on our website. It's a little form that you fill in and what address you want your mail sent to, and there will be a charge of $2.50 to get 10 labels for that. And that would cover her expenses for doing that. So that's a nice feature to be able to do. What's interesting, though, is that so we appreciate Lily for reaching out and trying getting that process done. Some of you who are seasonal or who might be leaving for the summer might want to try it out. It's a really simple form. And if you've, like some of us who actually do some shopping on the internet, your address and everything is already there. So it will autofill your address. So it makes it a lot easier. An interesting thing, though, today on the news was that the United States, I don't know if it was Congress or, I mean, if it was the Senate or House of Representatives that passed this, but they now are going to make changes to how the mail center funds its retirement plans. And so much of the mail center problem that we've had resulted from a thing years ago where the government told the Postal Service that they needed to fund their pension plan within 10 years. And that has cost the United States Post Office to really run in the red, significantly in the red, all these years. And there was something a few years back to try to get that change back, but they did not do it a few years back. And that is one of the things, our fallout of no longer having our post office here was a direct result of that. Now, I can be assured or feel very confident that the post office is not going to come back to us and say, hey, do you want your post office back? But it is what it is. So I just found that curious that it happened that same day. The other thing I wanted to mention was the fencing. Mike Perry, do you want to mention that? Okay. I'll get there. I'll get there. Yeah. Anyway, the fence is up. Jill, has the blast gone out about that?
No, it has not. It will not begin locking up until Monday.
Until Monday, okay.
Okay, well, this is the first step in the first phase that we did with trying to clean up our refuge and the recycling area. So we're going to put operating hours on that facility from 7 a.m. to 5:30 p.m. And then that facility will be locked up. And there won't be any access to it. And as you've seen, if you've been down in that area, it goes from wall to wall. So there's no gaps. So we're hoping that we can control some of that. We're having some late hour usage by people who aren't authorized to use that facility. And I believe that's going to stop that. So that's the next step in that phase. We currently don't have any signage up. And I think that's the first step. We need to get that signage up and show operating hours. And then we'll lock that baby up.
Great. We have a blast going out today talking about the who, what, where, why portion of it. And Jill had talked about getting a poster laminated pretty much of that, putting it up on zip ties as a temporary until we get it figured out, which will include Happy Trails residents only on it. It will not say that Arizona Traditions people will be shot,
Yeah,
but
that's correct.
that's
Well,
underlying part of it.
I'm sure our neighbors are being friendly, but anyway, that's the first plan. So we'll see how this progresses.
Okay.
I hope this helps people self-discipline, use that facility the way it's designed to use. And anyway, that's the first step. I hate for us to go to the next step, which would be a lot more severe than that. And I certainly don't want to have to put someone down there because I can assure you that if we put someone down there, there's going to be a conflict. And I don't want somebody, a resident or a volunteer, having to do conflict resolution. That's how we lose our volunteers. And I don't want to have that happen. So, and I don't want to have to pay somebody to go down there and sit down there, you know, from 7 a.m. to 7 or 5:30 p.m. every day. So let's just see how this works and see what kind of feedback we get.
Mike, are we going to have cameras down there?
We are going to have, we do have a camera down there and the camera does work. The problem is that the antenna on top of this building sits down here on this eave down here. And that antenna is not directionally lined up with the camera system. The camera sends out a signal and that. So we got people working on this roof, dragging hoses and cables and wires. And it doesn't do us any effective good right this minute to get that camera and that antenna realigned until we get this roof on. After that, we don't have population on the roof stumbling around, pulling stuff around. Then we can realign it and we will have monitoring of that facility.
Okay. Thank you. The couple of questions on the chat about this was apparently on Facebook. People are wondering regarding the cost of recycling and all. We've talked about that at a couple of meetings, the town meeting. They wanted to know what we pay per removal of each dumpster. We can get you a breakdown of all this. All I know is that we spend at least $180,000 a year for all the trash removal. That includes in-ground and the dumpster trash. Every month, Mike and I sign a check for between $18,000 and $24,000 a month for that. So it's a significant amount of money. And then there was another question. What it sounds to me like a couple of people on the chat and on Facebook are wanting a little breakdown of the detail of it, and particularly business owners and that. So more information to come on that. But
well, we have had a breakdown in a couple of different meetings before. I don't have a problem bringing that information back to the owners and maybe breaking it down into further where we actually spend how much each one of them drums. Every one of those barrels costs us a transportation cost, every one of those things. And it could be $100 a piece. I don't know. So I do know that is $100 a piece, but we'll provide that information and publicize it so everybody will know but I don't see that this is going to affect the overall cost. We haven't done anything to reduce the recycling or reduce the trash that goes up there. That's not what this is about. This is about people when it's full, stop putting stuff in it. Because we have to send maintenance guys up there to unload it so that they can be dumped. That's a cost that we're not even calculating yet. So let's, step one, let's not get ahead of ourselves. Let's progress slowly, try to get everybody on board, and then we'll move on to the next phase of this thing.
In-ground trash, just for your information, varies by month because of the snowbirds that are here that we don't have to pick up. So it's a varying thing throughout the year. The trash that goes with the containers and stuff out here, we pay for them by a trip cost for the trash and then a weight cost, how much weight's in the container.
And just as a comparison, we pay 108, we've paid this last year, $180,000 a year for our trash. We've paid $230,000 for electricity. Pretty darn close, don't you think? We pay just as much for trash as we do electricity. And I'll also point out, technically, in our CCNRs, the only thing that the association is required to pay is your in-ground trash. All of the rest of that is extra. So, okay. More on that. Okay, so talk about the fencing, mail center. Remind everybody about the social this afternoon, the happy hour. I think pickleball is doing that, so that will be fun. Remind everybody you have an hour and 40 minutes to get your ballots in for the board. We've got 6 wonderful candidates running for 4 positions. And then also reminding people that our annual meeting will be on Tuesday, the 15th, at 1 p.m. Be there or be square. And that's all I have for the board meeting.
Madam President,
Just a second.
Madam President,
Yes.
one item, since it's the last time I had to get to do this. Water consumption. Our water bills go up. I remember since we've been here, we've always got reminded, you don't have to wash your drive down every day. Man, I go down my street and there's the same people just flushing the hell out of it. And that just drives our water bills up. So if we want to save a few bucks, the best way is with a power washer. You use limited water and you get the job done. So conserve. Thank you.
I'll tack on to that.
Amen.
Tack onto that, though, it's not necessarily the water as one issue. The other issue is that spraying down your driveway every day is going into our asphalt and it's harming our asphalt. We've been to workshops on asphalt, and water is probably the worst thing that can happen to asphalt. And we spend over $500,000 a year to replace our asphalt. And if we could maybe spend only $400 because we're not doing as much damage to the asphalt, it would be helpful. So with that, I'm going to close this meeting, and then we'll have Becky give us a presentation on the chuck wagon. So motion to close.
So move.
Any second? Okay. All right. Becky, would you give us a presentation on the chuck wagon?
Becky for president.
First of all, I want everyone to meet Cindy, who is my co-manager. And she's the brains of the operation. I'm just the worker bee. Anyway, if Dave can throw some slides up, if you had been around 2 weeks ago, we had volunteers all over the place doing tasks, cleaning. That place is so clean that you can't believe it. Every day we clean again before we leave so that we don't ever get back into the situation like that again. So these are some of our volunteers doing different jobs. And some of them were laying on the floor. Some of them were standing on a ladder that we didn't approve of, but they all worked very, very hard. We're up and running. Today we had a marvelous day. If you didn't come and work, if you don't volunteer in there, we're asking, please come in and support us. If you don't support us, then we won't be there. So if anybody has any questions about the chuck wagon, I know that 3 people have already asked me for like about this high with work, and it's all kind of new to the 2 of us. So we're trying our best. We've had some issues. There was a potato issue. I think we've solved that. And I guess that's all I have to say. I just really thank all of you for supporting us and for volunteering. Okay, what about ice cream? Today is the first day that we've had a freezer. So Cindy has been running back and forth to the store every day doing shopping. So we have it now. So we'll be in touch with Izzy, who is the coordinator of ice cream, and we hopefully can, within the next 2 weeks, have it up and running. So she's going to be needing some volunteers, so you might want to call Izzy Nielsen. So any questions?
Before you leave, Becky, I just want to make a comment that I'm pretty sure everyone in this room is kind of like preaching to the choir. Without your effort and time and energy, we'd still be wondering when we were going to have coffee and donuts and then breakfast. Thank you for all your effort and time.
Thank you. But don't forget Cindy, because she's right there with me every minute. So, and the volunteers, if we didn't have volunteers, we wouldn't be doing this. So thank you, thank you, thank you.
The record.
Are we adjourned?
We did that. You made the motion.
You heard the part.